Good morning. We have just today launched the new spreadsheet, which is to come in line with the new check test. Of course, we've been told that the standards check, that of course, this system of triggers is going to happen. About over 15 years ago, I first wrote this spreadsheet. Now, I wrote this spreadsheet for my own personal use. It came around the time, some of you have been there long enough, know about the rumours about test rigging, really, or the DVSA had quotas, etc. And although I never believed it at the time, I actually produced a spreadsheet, and the idea is the spreadsheet would record everything. It would record the examiner, the amount of faults we got, the amount of passes, etc., etc. And one thing that it conclusively proved, certainly within Exeter Test Centre, etc., there was no special rigging going on. There was nothing, etc. All the examiners had roughly the same pass rate. But what I did is I found it very, very useful for myself, because originally I noticed that I was getting, first of all, a lot of faults for gears. There seemed to be a lot of faults. Not that pupils were necessarily failing for the gears, but I did seem to note I was getting a high proportion of gear faults. So I took the opportunity to have a word with one of the examiners one day and sort of said to him, look, I seem to be getting these gear faults, etc. In fact, it was an examiner that just passed one of my pupils, but there was a fault there for gears. So I just said to him, look, can you explain to me what this is? And he said, oh, yes, they're changing up into the gears a little bit too early. Oh, okay. So what I did is I set about getting my pupils then to change up into gear a little bit later. And what I noticed is that these faults started to disappear. The next fault on the list was positioning. I noticed positioning were getting high. So again, having a word with the examiner, and they felt their position was a little too far to the right. So I sort of looked at it and thought, maybe it is, and corrected it. And gradually, one by one, I would be picking off the faults that were giving me the most faults, and I was reducing the amount of overall faults that I was getting. And eventually I found that I was getting an average of around about, well, it was 3 or 4 faults, etc. I can't remember the exact figure. Somewhere about 3 or 4 faults anyway. Albeit one of them may be a serious fault, with 1 driver fault, or 1 serious fault, and 2 driver faults, or 3 driver faults, or 3 driver faults, or whatever, etc., etc. And now I realised it. Even though pupils were sometimes failing for the 1 driver fault, 1 driver fault, 1 serious fault, actually I was doing my job well, because the overall number of faults that my pupils were getting, I was managing to decline. I was managing to bring it down and down all the time by looking at each individual fault. Now, without the spreadsheet, I wouldn't be able to do that, because it wouldn't have necessarily shown me all these things. It was a very, very funny thing. In Exeter Test Centre, there was an examiner, going back 20 years, who was known as Mr. Mirrors. Apologies for anybody who know who I'm talking about, and certainly apologies to the certain examiner who was known then as Mr. Mirrors. But basically what would happen is pupils would fail with him, and there'd be a mirror fault, and everybody would go, oh, Mr. Mirrors, you know what he's like, on his mirrors, And certainly I felt the same, I see a pupil serious for mirrors, oh, it's him and his mirrors, And I fell for this, thinking, there it was. What this spreadsheet showed me is, in actual fact, Mr. Mirrors actually gave less faults on mirrors than any of the other examiners, only slightly, but less faults. And of course, you realise then that, of course, once you get something in your mind, it stands out. It's a bit like if you buy a red car, you see red cars. If you buy a Skoda, you see Skodas out there. At the moment I have a Heimer motorhome, so I see every Heimer motorhome on the thing. So I'm going to introduce you to the spreadsheet. I'm just going to share my screen with me, if you just bear with me a moment. Okay. And you should now all be looking at the spreadsheet. What I would do, I would normally, at the end of a driving test, quickly take the pupils' DL25, and on a piece of rough paper, I would literally scribble down the examiner, the time, the date, etc., etc. And then if there was a driver fault, a serious whatever, under what section it was, whether it was mirrors there, it took me 10, 20 seconds, just scribble it on a bit of paper. And then in the evening, I'd come home and then I would fill in this chart. So here I am here. So let's imagine I've just done a test today, the 7th of the, let's see if I can put this in here. Here's me, date of test, the 7th of the 9th of 2021, very simple. And a pupil, we'll put in here, for example, and the examiner was a examiner. It doesn't matter with this, again, and the total fault, and the day and the time we could put it in. So Thursday, and let's put it was 3 p.m. Okay, that's all we need. We'd record whether it was a fail or a pass. This is a drop-down list, but equally you could just start and put fail in, and it would work there. But oops, cancel that there. And imagine this was the pupil's first attempt. Okay, useful there. And then the rest you don't need to fill in there. Now let's imagine this pupil picked up a fault for, let's say, a controlled stop. Now, it was only a driver fault, so let's put a 1 in for driver fault. And let's imagine that this pupil also picked in, and this really does cover everything. Let's imagine, let's put in a steering fault there. Okay, so they got a steering fault. Okay, and we'll put in one more fault. It doesn't matter what really. Let's put in a signal fault. So there was a signal fault. If I go back to the beginning here, it's telling us here, it's totaling everything up 3 driver faults. Now, let's imagine we're also, if we were putting 1 for a serious fault, let's put in the 1 there. Let's imagine I've got 1 on the control, on the reverse left, and again, both. This immediately is, you'll see up the top here, is immediately giving you a fault here on this. Nothing to worry about now. Now, obviously, I said that was a pass, so we'll remove that 1 from there. Okay. And you will just keep filling them in, each test you put there. And what will happen is gradually, if you imagine, if you start having serious faults on your test, etc., let's put them here. I'm just putting them in randomly at the moment, etc. You'll notice they'll start going up. Also, if you put in let's put in a few fails there. And we're going to put in a few fails, and you'll notice that the averages are coming up. We've got 2 reds at the moment, but we don't want any dangerous faults, etc. Driving faults, serious faults in there, etc. But it's starting. Average faults per test here at the moment is 1 because we've only done 3 there, 1 there. But if let me really don't be really daft here. I know you can't get it. If you put in 6 faults. Oops, hang on, I don't want 6 serious faults. Let's put in 6 driver faults here. It doesn't matter where you put them. You'll see the average is 3. We're still there, etc. So we've got 6 faults here now. You might be panicking at 6 faults. Let's imagine 14 here. I know we can't hit 14, but again, it's happening. But 14 wouldn't be in one box because it'd be all of them. Basically, with this, just keep filling it in. I wouldn't worry about it, etc. At the top of each column here, along here, you'll notice the number of faults will be totaling. So once you've got a good sample, a good few faults in there, etc., then you'll be able to see your average coming up. You'll be able to see whether or not you're getting a lot of faults in one area and what the average is, etc. The columns along the top literally work along the DL25, the new current one that we've got, etc. Fill it in there. Ignore things like motorcycle balance, PVC. They're on the test anyway. Leave them there. I've left them in there because I want this horn to be multiple use. So perhaps if motorcycle testers or PCBs want to use it, it can be useful for them as well. Michael in the office has wrote on the first page, you'll notice there's a set of instructions to help you. Again, they're just telling you what to do in here and in there. I'm hoping this is going to be of use to you all. Yeah, I'm hoping this is going to be of use to people. I was using it over about 3 or 4 years and had a lot of test data on mine. Foolishly, big bit of advice here for you, never save anything to your desktop. On your desktop, on your computer, you should only really ever have shortcuts to where the items are. I was saving mine to my desktop some years ago when studying, spilled a glass of water over my laptop, fried my laptop, took the hard drive to have everything recovered. They recovered everything, but unfortunately this being stored on my desktop, they couldn't retrieve it. And unfortunately, I lost 3 or so years, 3, maybe 4 years of data, which was so valuable to me. And I wish we had it now. Good luck with the form. Good luck with your standards checks, etc., etc. I stress this, don't worry if you start getting a few faults with 7 and 5. Don't worry, because when you get the 2s and the 3s, it'll bring your averages down. If you're at all worried, you've come onto DTE-Elite website and ask some advice in there. Join the Facebook forum if you're not part of it, etc. All you get from me, all you get from us is good, factual, solid advice, etc. We don't really go with all the rubbish things that you get and all the, my auntie's uncle dog said, etc., etc. Okay, thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody. Hope this has been useful to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.